Another procedure that you've been hearing a lot about is the thread lifts, and people have often been asking me what is a thread lift and how does it help and how does it work. What is the use of a thread lift? So the thread lifts, as I said, because when you don't need to excise skin or early signs of aging, or we just have a small area which is basically the malar pad of fat which has come down, or there is development of the jowls, you need to lift them without going in for a full major surgery. Then you can do a thread lift. You put in 4 to 6 threads and then you lift it so that it brings all the structures back to where it should be. So that is how a thread lift works, and because there are no major cuts anywhere, so the recovery time is faster, though you still have a recovery time for these procedures. Now the free threads are, as I said, more for rejuvenating purposes. They are not for a lift. They of course give you a splinting effect, but they don't do a lift. So basically you put the free threads in, you form a grid around it on the cheek or the area. So what happens is, as this grid absorbs, it forms a grid of collagen there, and that is how it rejuvenates the skin. And the PLLA threads, they cause more reaction, so they cause more deposition of collagen, so that is why they are called stimulatory threads or stimulatory fillers. So that is how the threads work. So the thread lifts can be of two varieties mainly. When we talk about gross differences, is one is a free floating threads and one are fixed threads. So the threads are basically sutures, and these are made most commonly of PDO, and that is an absorbable suture material, and another one is PLLA. So these two suture materials they get absorbed into the body, but it has been seen that once they get absorbed or assimilated into the body, they also have an effect on the collagen production, or they increase the collagen deposition in that area. The PLLA is basically a newer material which has come in, which has more stimulatory effect, and that is why they are available as fillers and threads. And the PLLA causes more stimulation effect and produces more collagen in that area. So the threads can be, as I said, they can be either PDO or PLLA, and then they can be free threads or they can be suspended threads. So the free threads basically are threads that you insert or you put under the skin, and you put multiple threads under the skin, and as they get absorbed and are rejuvenated, they form collagen under the skin. So it is like an anti-aging procedure. It doesn't give you any immediate fullness, or it doesn't give you any immediate effect like a filler does. So that is the difference. So this is basically, you have to put in the thread and then you allow the collagen to form. So it's a long term, in the next 3 to 4 months or 6 months, as they get absorbed, then the collagen deposition happens and you start to see a better result in the skin. The fixed threads are basically barbed threads, so they have hooks in them along the length, and they are used to lift structures. So if you want to do a lift where you don't need to excise too much of the skin, but you just need a lift, then you can use the barbed threads or the suspended threads. In suspended threads, there are two varieties. One is called the cog threads, which is basically a non-surgical process again, where you just insert the thread and then you pull the tissues. And here the difference is that it is not fixed to any major fixed structure on the face. It is just fixed from the skin or the dermis from the skin to the underlying structures. So it just gives you a minimal lift. which is more appreciated, but over a period of time, because it is still fixed to the skin or the mobile area of the skin, the sag can still reoccur. The other is the suspended threads, which we do, which is basically it is fixed to a fixed point. So most commonly it is fixed to the temporal fascia, which is basically this muscle that you can keep your hand here and clench your teeth. You can feel a muscle. So that is one of the chewing muscles, and there is a rigid layer there on which the threads are fixed, and from there you suspend the threads all around the face to allow it to lift. And because it is fixed at a point up there, it tends to stay there longer. So what other areas can threads be used for? So as I mentioned, the stimulatory threads or the free floating threads, they can be used anywhere on the face. Most commonly they are used for collagen rejuvenation, so they are used around the face in the skin, and you can also use it along with fillers for dorsal augmentation of the nose, that is to build up the bridge of the nose. You can use it in the lines for the nasolabials instead of fillers, and you can use it in the forehead wrinkles, you can use it in stretch marks. So there are various indications where it can be used. The suspended threads, as I said, the suspended threads need to be used where there is an actual sag that you need to be lifted. It's most commonly in the cheek. You can also use it for the neck, and sometimes you can use it even for the brow lift, where you are lifting the brow by using threads. So these are the common uses of threads. So what is the difference between free threads and the suspended threads? So the free threads, as I said, they are blind, and you don't have it's not fixed to any point, and they are used for stimulation of the skin to promote collagen formation. So their immediate effect can be because of only splinting. So you have multiple threads, so it just splints the area, so it gives you a taut look. But as they get absorbed, then you form collagen fibrils there, and as it contracts, it tends to shrink and give you a more taut look. But that is a delayed process. It takes about 3 to 6 months minimum by the time you start noticing any changes. The immediate effect is only by the splinting. When you form a grid around it, it just splints it and keeps the cheek firm, and that gives you an immediate kind of a result. Now, what are suspended threads? Suspended threads are fixed to a certain point. So it could be either cork threads where you're fixed only to the dermis, or it could be a suspended thread which is fixed to the temporal fascia. And there, because they are fixed to a certain point, it gives you the lift. They have hooks in them, so you engage the tissues and you give them a lift. So usually when you're talking about thread lifts, you need to do a combination of suspended and free threads to give you a kind of a rejuvenation as well as a lift together. Just doing free threads is not going to give you any immediate effect, and just doing suspended threads, you might still need some kind of stimulatory filling that you need to do on a later on. So that is the reason that you combine the the free threads as well as the suspended threads to give you an immediate effect as well as a prolonged long-term effect. So you combine both of them and then you do the procedure. The free threads usually you require about, for each side you require anywhere between about 15 to 20 threads minimum, and the suspended threads you might require about 4 to 6 per side, and that is how it's done. And all these will still, the free threads, you don't have too much of a downtime. Maybe 2 or 3 days downtime is good enough. You can still see that everything is healed and you don't have too many major issues. But if you are doing a suspended thread lift, then you have to give yourself that 2-3 days extra, so that the swelling around the threads vanishes and you don't have a photo shoot or a event just within 1 or 2 days after the thread lift. Give yourself the 2-3 days time. In our Indian patients, we see that we need a lot of our faces tend to sag rather than wrinkle, In Caucasian skin, the skin is thinner, and so the wrinkling appears much faster, and they have a lot of excess skin which needs to be removed. So the facelift works very good for them. But for our Indian skin and Indian conditions, our faces are heavier, we have a thicker dermis, and that is why we tend to sag more rather than actual wrinkling of the skin where there is excess skin. In the sag, it's basically the ligaments which are becoming loose, and there is loss of volume which is causing the face to come down and become more squarish. So what the thread lift, we do the suspender thread lifts, is it pulls the skin up and it gives you a more triangular look. So it is just to reposition everything back how it was. So it just pulls it back like this, and then it repositions the jowls, repositions the fat, repositions the fat pad to pull it back into where it was. The advantage being that you don't have any major cuts, and you just have two small puncture marks here from where you're putting the threads in, but you still have a downtime. So it takes about a week. When we are doing the threads, we tend to overcorrect, we pull it back as much as possible, and then in a week's time, as the swelling relaxes, then it comes back to how it should be, and we do some minor adjustments if required after a week to see that everything is in place. So if you are doing a thread lift, you have to give yourself that 1 week. You can't have any event or a procedure, or you can't have a shoot during that time.